Hey, what's up? Welcome to the Newsletter Operator Podcast. I am here with John Elder, the founder of Black Label Advisor. Just so the audience knows, tell us who you are, what you do, what is the name of your company and newsletter, and then we'll get into all that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, Matt. It's just an honor to be on this show. So to give everyone listening a kind of a quick rundown, my background's a little not normal. So my background, I thought it was going to be in the commercial construction industry forever. And so right out of college, I was actually working on amazing projects. San Diego Airport was my first project right out of the gates. I realized pretty quick then that climbing the ladder is going to be a little slow. So I started a side gig that was launching my first brand on Amazon. It was a private label brand that grew and kind of snowballed into 5 brands, then went full time with that, selling on Amazon. Did really well, exited in late 2019. When you're at a certain level on Amazon, you kind of get burned out, and I was definitely ready to take a break. And then really had to ask myself, what do I want to do next? And then Black Label Advisor sprung out of that. And that was really fulfilling a need in the market, which was basically transparent consulting. So what I do is I walk with sellers, I consult them, I help them grow faster on Amazon, help them avoid the million pitfalls of being on the platform. Also help D2C web brand owners get onto Amazon and do it correctly. There's a lot of misinformation that's out there, and there are a lot of expectations that don't actually line up. So I kind of help them realign their focus on Amazon and launched Amazon Insiders, roughly 2 years ago.
And that's the newsletter, Amazon Insiders, right?
Yeah, Amazon Insiders was launched specifically for the micro niche community of anyone who sells on Amazon. So that actually started with the newsletter space. And I was watching you and lots of other people in the newsletter space. I'm like, wait a second, this could be a potential second revenue stream for my business, but also a great education that are active on the platform. So yeah, it's grown very, very fast. I have over 15,000 subscribers now. The goal is 100,000 by next Christmas, and we'll see what happens.
Sounds good. How would you describe a micro niche, however you want to say
it? 2 things. One, the revenue is really small when you're looking at it, and I'll just go back to Amazon. Think like less than 5 sellers are active. It could be a trend that's forecasted to do a lot. So some of that has to do with your gut instinct on a space. So everything I did personally, I can't talk about the brand names, but I can talk about the general spaces I was in. So there was this massive trend in a very specific toy category for kids. So it was an outdoor kids toy type market, and it started growing really fast. And it's weird because it was actually not like a new utility patent type product. It was just kind of a generic type product that just all of a sudden exploded. And this is pre-COVID, by the way, and it actually got even more popular during COVID with people staying home more. So few sellers, revenue definitely under 100,000 a month on Amazon, and just trying to figure out the projections of where that space is going to go. That is harder to capture and explain here, but it really comes down to being passionate about your category. So for me, at that time I had 1 kid, and that was a real passion for me, trying to understand what are they really interested in? How do I get them outside more? It really has to be something, not that you have to be an expert in it, but you have to have some sort of passion or interest in that micro niche.
Yeah, and if you have that interest, you're going to know the ins and outs of it, versus if you're from the outside looking in, you're not going to be able to see things like that, I imagine. And so you use that strategy to pick your newsletter. And it seems like it kind of played out organically because you were in Amazon, you're consulting, you're doing micro niches. So you started the newsletter about Amazon. Why did you start the newsletter? Because you wanted to have a separate business model in media? Did you want to start the newsletter to get more clients, or all the above? Or what was the reason for starting the newsletter originally?
Yeah, so that's kind of I can't really answer that like perfectly because going back, I didn't think the newsletter was going to go anywhere. I saw other newsletters. I didn't really have a lot of like hope for it. I didn't even know if it was going to be around in a year, but the growth kept happening. And I started realizing, oh my gosh, I can monetize this. I can use this to promote other newsletters, friends of mine. There's a lot of stuff going on with the newsletter, but in the beginning, it wasn't something where I'm like, oh, I know for sure this is going to happen. It definitely felt like molasses, where it just felt stuck and it was really, really slow. And I was trying so hard. I didn't use any of the tools out there either. So I was just kind of spreading it word of mouth at that point.
So tell me about that. How did you get your first 100 subscribers for the newsletter?
Yeah, so that was all about reaching out to all my contacts. So the Amazon space in terms of like service providers is actually pretty small. And if you know 10 people, you know the rest of the industry. It's just one of those industries where, if you can make those initial connections, you can naturally be introduced to other people. I started Amazon in 2014 and, I already knew a lot of the software providers. And so I'm like, hey, can you promote this? So I got some free promotion in other service providers, their newsletters. I started out with my mastermind that I was a part of, just asking them gently, hey, I just started a newsletter. Would you mind sharing this with your network? So that was them posting on their social media platforms. So it was kind of just really just asking people to post about it. So that's how it started. And that kind of snowballed into doing a lot of swaps with other newsletters, larger and
When did
larger.
that start? So was that when the swaps? Did
Oh,
you start that at 100? Did you start that at 1,000? Because it's hard to do a swap if you're at
man.
10 subscribers, right?
Yeah. I would say I started doing newsletter swaps at like 750 subscribers.
Really?
And it was kind of like they didn't get a lot of value from it. It's all relationship based. Like I know these guys. And so I'm like, hey, would you mind like promoting? And of course I pitched the vision of what Amazon Insiders was going to be someday. The focus is not getting people signed up with me as a consulting client. The whole purpose is education and making sure people are staying ahead of their competition. I was very fortunate to have a lot of those relationships where they were just open to doing that for me in the beginning. So that really helped to boost things. And of course, over time, once I got to 1,000, 1,500, it started to kind of snowball into, okay, what are other tools out there that I can be using? And that's when I started incorporating things like Spark Loop and Twitter ads.
So let's pause there and break down. So we got 1,000 subscribers or a little bit more. How do you grow it from 1,000 or 2,000 to over 10,000 subscribers? Like, what's the first kind of like scalable marketing channel that worked for you?
Definitely Spark Loop. And so the reason why that works so well is because you can kind of hyper target basically who you're trying to get signed up. Like I didn't want general, people interested in marketing. I didn't want people interested in, house hacking and things like that. I wanted people who are already active selling on Amazon or they're looking at starting an FBA business. So the grouping of newsletters that would promote me with Upscribe was maybe like 5 at the time. Now I'm at a dozen, where it makes a lot of sense with them. Spark Loop's obviously grown a lot since then. That was kind of the engine behind the scenes.
And how did you get the first 5 to promote you? I mean, it's not. Did you reach out to any? I know you're setting on SparkLoop. You set a
Yeah.
fixed CPA of what you want to pay for a subscriber, and you set criteria of the subscribers that you'll accept. How did you think about setting up your offer so people promoted you and getting them to promote you?
Yeah. So I started out definitely higher than most. So I was very aggressive with the offer. Obviously, I had to be really careful with, making sure that I was canceling certain newsletters because it wasn't matched up at all. But I made it really, really attractive. And then that led into just manual requests. So I actually knew some of the newsletter owners and, just ping them, direct message on Twitter. Hey, are you interested in this? So I had that happen as well. Probably 50% of the time I knew them. And a couple of them, they were just kind of already in the industry anyways. Some of them wrote on Amazon related subjects, but it was about 50-50 split.
Sounds good. Any common mistakes people should avoid if they're using SparkLoop that you've
Oh
run
yeah.
into?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I would say the most common mistake is not setting up a correct vetting procedure. So just to give you one example, you can sign up for Spark Loop. You can get hundreds of new subscribers, but what if they're not targeted and they're not opening up your emails? So you need to set up a rule within your account. And I think actually they're launching this month, but you can set it up for you want one open within the first 2 weeks, or you want two opens, or you want 2 clicks. It's kind of up to you how you gauge, how active they are. That is absolutely crucial because you only want people who are interested and are actually going to click on ads, who are actually interested in the space that you're writing for. Otherwise, you kind of have a dead list. I mean, who cares if your list is like 20% open? The goal is obviously to maintain 50% plus. And to do that, you have to have strict rules.
Okay, so setting those rules, removing subscribers who don't meet that criteria, that's really important.
Definitely.
If you were to break down your subscriber list into a pie chart and like look at the different sources of where those came from, Sparkloop's a big one. Any other big growth sources that come to mind that worked well for
Oh,
you?
yeah, absolutely. I would definitely say I use Hype Theory on the back end for Twitter. From day one, I went in all in on Twitter, and I'm like, I'm going to ignore TikTok. I don't even care about doing videos on Instagram. I'm only going to do this. And so that really helped me focus on one platform. Having the automatic follow-up posts, promoting a newsletter has helped a lot. Optimizing my bio, doing everything I can to showcase, okay, here's a newsletter. If you're interested in this subject, please sign up here. So I would say I'm aggressive. You need to be checking out your feed to make sure you delete that, just in case that does happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so by going all in on Twitter, explain what that meant for you. Was that publishing every day? Was that threads? Like what Twitter growth strategies worked for you in the early days?
Yeah, so Twitter's a really interesting story. It's obviously changed over the 3 years that I've been on the platform, but it's all been focused on really detailed long form content. So my the fastest I've ever grown has been when I'm doing two monster threads every week. And for single tweets, I probably do 7 tweets per day. And a lot of people have asked me, like, oh my gosh, John, how do you manage that? How do you manage your clients and your newsletter? And honestly, everything I do with Twitter is off the cuff. So I don't actually schedule anything. So a lot of people are like, what? There's no way. The way my brain works, it's just best to describe it that way. I have like some thought. It could be an Amazon package that I get and it triggers an idea for something else. There might be a story about drones and how Amazon's incorporating drones. So I'm going to post about that. So it's very off the cuff, very fresh content. I don't use any of the scheduling tools that Hype
Yeah.
Fury offers. It's been really focused on that. And also having like a small mastermind helps a lot. So think like 10 other people that are, bigger accounts than you, and they're willing to like your post, comment on your post. That has been hugely beneficial.
So I want to dive into all three of those things. So I think one, publishing 7 times a day, like a lot of people realize you have to get into the habit of publishing, and like as you're thinking, going throughout your day thinking, you need to think about those as tweets. And I think most people don't do that because they're not publishing regularly. So I think it's a habit you go into. I imagine you didn't start
Definitely.
publishing 7 times a day, but over time you've built that up, right?
It definitely ended there as an average. I try to tweet every between 2 and 3 hours. In the beginning, when you're starting out on Twitter, it's very hard to know like what is the right strategy. And thankfully there are a lot of accounts now that are dedicated to like, okay, this is how you can get, higher reach. This is what you should avoid. So there's a lot of education over the years for those things. But the algorithm seems to really appreciate consistent posting with long form content. And so I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, and hopefully the algorithm doesn't punish me.
Yeah. And so you mentioned long detailed threads have been a big part of your Twitter growth. As Twitter has moved away from threads, they get less reach. Has anything worked for you recently? Is it instead of long detailed threads, it's long detailed long tweets, or what is it for
Yeah,
you?
yeah. So I keep A/B testing it. So I still do threads once in a while just to test it, but I've definitely shifted probably 80% to doing long form tweets. So the Amazon space, it's really easy to do that because it could be as simple as 5 hacks for getting ready for Prime Day, or it could be as detailed as this is A to Z how you should be importing your goods from China, from negotiations all the way to getting your stuff into Amazon FBA warehouses. So those are very long, detailed explanations that really I kind of consider them like short blog posts. And so really I've just taken my threads, the formatting, and then condensed it down and make it look as nice as I can to what I call a monster post.
Got it. And so tell me about the mastermind group. So kind of like an engagement
Yeah.
group where you find other people maybe in your niche and like
Yep.
you send them likes and stuff and it's mutual. Like how do you find that group? Was it just kind of
I
yeah,
honestly,
tell me about it.
that has been, yeah, it's a great question. So that has been a natural relationship building thing. So that there's a lot of, I would say, camaraderie in the Amazon space. So if you have your own brand, when I say like as an Amazon seller, when I'm talking about who that person is, this is someone that owns their trademark. This is someone who owns their packaging. They own their sourcing. They have relationships with factories. They're really trying to build the next Nike. That's who I'm talking about. I'm not talking really about resellers, people that buy stuff at Target and sell it on Amazon. I'm talking about brand owners. And so a lot of those guys have very established brands where there's just natural chemistry because we're all trying to do the same thing. So when you look at companies like Hexclad or Simple Modern, they're awesome companies that have really gone through the ups and downs of the Amazon space. And of course, I would say with those groups, there's natural chemistry that's outside of the Amazon space. So that could be general interest in maybe similar hobbies. A couple guys are Christians as well. I'm a Christian. And so a lot of those things are kind of natural conversation starters. It's very organic and casual. There's no like rule of like who's tracking things. It's really up to the person to submit their posts. And it's like, okay, great. Like, of course, I'm gonna look at your post. I know it's not going to be garbage. So liking a post, retweeting a post, and commenting is very easy because they're producing such good content that it's just basically a cakewalk to do
Yeah.
that. Like
So
it takes like 2 seconds.
yeah, it seems like the formula is find people you have stuff in common with, you like their content, it's quality, you have a
Absolutely,
past relationship with already, and
absolutely.
then don't have too much pressure and rules. Some of these groups I've heard have like you only get like so many post requests per week you can put in. It's like very rule based and tit for tat. That seems a little bit too intense for me. I like the style that you're doing it with.
I've been in those types of groups and they've kind of died. To be honest with you, it's just when you're doing it when there are so many rules involved, I think it zaps the inspiration behind it. When you really value someone's post and know, okay, this post is coming from very real experience. For example, interacting with someone that's doing 20 million in Amazon, it's going to be a natural conversation with that person. So what they're writing is not some like, oh, check out my Gumroad course. This is the real deal. And so their content is really solid and it's easy to say yes to that. So, to set up those relationships, it's been just a question like, hey, would you be interested in doing this? Yeah, of course. So it's really casual. I think it's the best way. I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with me, but as long as you have strong relationships with those people and you have a lot of trust built up, we respond to each other too. And we say, okay, done. I did
Yeah.
that. And then the expectation is, okay, they're waiting for my post next. There's really no pressure when you're doing it.
Awesome. I want to talk about monetization. Before we do, can you give us like to wrap up the growth stuff? Give us like a final best estimate on like the pie chart of your subscriber growth. X% Sparkloop, X% Twitter. What does that look like for you?
Ooh, so eSparkloop is probably 25%, 50% is organic. Well, sorry. When I say organic, I also include the Twitter ads. So that's, the Hype Fury automatic posting, right? Having the plug below the post, whatever I do on LinkedIn, my warm network, and then another 25% is from acquisition. So I acquired a email list that was hyper targeted in my space. So that's an additional 25%. So that kind of adjusted the pie as of 2 weeks ago.
Interesting. Yeah. Maybe can you elaborate a little bit on that acquisition? Like, I don't know how
Yeah,
much you can
yeah.
share that, but
So
I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I've kept it pretty quiet just for privacy reasons, but it's not a big deal. Someone reached out to me and they said, "Hey, John, with what you're doing with Amazon Insiders, it might make sense to sell this." Basically, the owner of the list and the website, they were in over their heads and they were like, this is too much. And it came with a lot of other resources. It came with some ebooks. And so there's a lot of value there for me. So for me, it was a slam dunk. It was much bigger than just the email list. Of course, I said yes, and there was some negotiation, and that actually closed roughly 2 weeks ago. So that's been just a really fun growth strategy that has been seamless.
And so you rolled these people into your list, right? So you acquired it,
Yes,
told people, hey, you're joining Amazon Insiders, and then
yes.
they wanted you didn't run this as a separate newsletter, separate company, right?
Some people do that. So I basically told them this list is not going to exist anymore, but you are joining an even better list. So I did an intro email to them and I explained to them, feel free to unsubscribe, but I'm telling you, Amazon Insiders is this list times 10. So I definitely pitched it that way and have maintained 95% of them. So it's been a very strong, seamless process.
That's good. And how do you think about the price for this? Do you like think about the value as like per subscriber? What do you want to pay per subscriber? Did you look at it as
Yeah,
far as
so
revenue?
I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you the number. So I paid $4 per subscriber, and some will say like, "Oh my gosh, like you got fleeced." But you have to understand something. This is in my industry, it's a very well-known website with a ton of traffic. So there's a lot of Google SEO that's already built in over many years. The other portion of it too is I got tons of content. So that content is going to be obviously reformatted and repurposed for social media and possibly a book in the future. So there's value there that the owner didn't place a value on, but to me that was extremely valuable. So that it's part of a bigger picture than just the email list. So that explains the higher price point per subscriber.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this when you were doing it. I think it's a good deal. And a lot of people don't realize for some newsletters, $4 for a subscriber would be high. But I think for this it makes
Yeah.
sense. And also let's say you're running ads in this newsletter, you wanted to like buy a sponsorship there. In that ad placement, you're gonna pay more than $4 per subscriber, most likely. The
Oh yeah.
CPA from a newsletter ad would be like $4 to $7. The CPA from a
Yeah.
Facebook or Twitter ad would be, $2 to $3 to $4. And so like
Yeah.
you're getting people who are already on a list about what you talk about. So
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense to pay that.
Yeah, and it's important to note like this is pretty much the most targeted email list that I could ask for. And so to me, I would have easily paid more. So it's extremely targeted and just a dream. It's kind of one of those opportunities where it kind of falls into your lap and you have to jump on it because it's such a good opportunity. So for me, it was perfect because it was seamless with Amazon Insiders, and it's just been smooth the whole process.
And the list was they weren't actively set. I don't believe they were actively sending to the list. Was that right?
No, they were.
They were
Yeah,
okay. So
they
that's
they
good
were
then.
not like the most consistent, but yeah, they were actively sending and they just so the site was being managed in the wrong way. They were viewing it through the wrong lens, and so it was basically to them as a dead asset. And to me, it was an extremely valuable asset. And I could basically steer the ship in the right direction.
Yeah, fit your business model better. I think one thing to look out for, the reason I mentioned active, is that is something people could look out for in the audience. If they want to acquire a newsletter in their niche, there's lots of people who just burn out on a newsletter and they don't want to write it anymore. And so you may be able to buy that newsletter for $2, $3, $4 per subscriber, and that's a great resource for you. So I think
Yeah, absolutely.
we're going to see. There's already a lot of inactive newsletters out there. There's going to be more and more over time, so it's something to look out for.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
Cool. Okay, so let's talk about monetization. So break down your business model and how you make money. You don't need to share revenue numbers, but it would be awesome to get a pie chart of like, okay, X% is sponsorship, X% is consulting, or whatever it might be for you, to kind of get an idea of how you make money in your business. Not revenue numbers, but like the
Oh, for sure.
percentages.
For sure. Yeah. So I'll name drop because he's been so helpful, but Marketing Max, he has been instrumental with just kind of indirectly helping me on the side. I basically modeled after his model or after his newsletter, and really it's sponsorship heavy. And so in my newsletter, I'm pretty clear. I'm I'm crystal clear about that above the fold, these are partnerships that I have with sponsors. And in the Amazon space, it also makes a lot of sense because my weekly Amazon hack will tie in oftentimes with the sponsor. So whenever I'm promoting something, that solution provider is someone who wants to get access to 15,000 Amazon sellers, but then the Amazon sellers also want to get access to whatever special deal they have. And sometimes they're not even aware of it. So sometimes it's funding for Amazon sellers. Sometimes it's monitoring software or inventory management, finding influencers. There's a wide range of things that Amazon sellers need to run their business properly. So I'm probably, I would say, 85% sponsorships right now. And so I have every single newsletter I send out, I have a total of 6 potential sponsors in my newsletter.
Wow, that's a lot more than average. Can we talk about that for a second? A lot of
Yeah.
people have like one, and not that it's, I think this is a smart and interesting thing to do. A lot of people have like one or two sponsor slots in a newsletter. Why do you decide six?
I wanted to kind of create a hybrid. And of course, I need to go back to Max because this is where I got the idea from. His newsletter is set up really similar to mine, basically having a premium primary ad spot. And so that's the very first thing that people see when they open up my newsletter. I might have like a quick little intro, maybe something related to, the previous week or some crazy Amazon news, but it goes right into the primary ad. That's kind of like a very wordy ad. That's up to 250 words. That's very, very long. And then right below that, I have short and sweet ads. So those are what I call solutions worth checking out. So those are more like, think like 2 sentences each. I don't always have 5 ads right there because that's all dependent on, who's booking the ad slots. But I have up to 5 right there. So, one week I might have 3. So I'll say, here are 3 solutions worth checking out. And then right after that, I go into my Amazon hack of the week. So I force people's eyeballs to go past my sponsors and then get to the content. And so, I'm subscribed to a million newsletters and I see like things all over the place. I have to go with, I have to basically balance the value of my subscriber, making sure that they want to stay subscribed, make sure they don't feel like they're getting spammed. And then I also have to balance, that with making sure the sponsors are happy. So far, people have no issue reading the content for the sponsors to get to the hack of the week. And so that's been something that's been pretty consistent. Max does that as well with his newsletter. It's very in your face. You open up a newsletter and you know who's sponsoring his newsletter. So mine's the same way.
Let's break down the process here. So tell us about how you find sponsors, and then we'll kind of go through it step by step.
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward because for me, straightforward because I know who I'm targeting. I know who would be a good fit as a sponsor, and it's definitely like a newer space. There are some newsletters that are more focused on service providers, and they have a couple sponsors and stuff. But I want it to be the Amazon newsletter. I want it to be like Justin Welsh, and I want it to be huge. And so to do that, I had to write from a very personal content approach. And then in terms of sponsors, I already have those relationships. I know the CEOs of all these companies. We go way back, starting in 2014. So a lot of these guys started their software companies when I was selling on Amazon. So a lot of those relationships were already built in. Outside of those normal relationships where it's very easy to talk to them, it's basically every subsect of the Amazon space. There's, I'd say 20 plus competitors. So it's just a natural finding them on LinkedIn, messaging them on there, pitching the concept, and then also finding their email. I land sponsors that way as well. That's been something that's obviously a lot of work. So you have to remind them, did you see the email? Sometimes people respond instantly and they're like, yes, let's book it. This is great. So it's definitely a wide spectrum of responses. That's kind of the general approach to finding them.
And so let's dig into that a little bit. So you find the company, and so most of these companies are software providers or services for Amazon sellers,
Correct.
right? And so who do you reach out to at the company? Is it the CEO? Is it marketing people, director of marketing?
I try to find the head of partnerships. This is going to be someone who is interested in a new lever of growth for the company. I try to find them. If I can't find them, I basically cold email their contact page on their website. So yeah, that's kind of who I'm focused on, because they already have they have their forecast done anyways. Like for Q4 right now, they know what their budget is left for Q4, and they know what's happening in Q1. So a lot of my sponsors, they're locking down Q1 and Q2 of next year.
Yeah.
So these are big, these are like, I would say, substantial packages of sponsoring the newsletter. And so a lot of those conversations are far, far out in advance.
And so you find that person, what type of message do you send them? Can you give us like a rundown of like what that copy
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
like?
No, my email's pretty short. It's pretty effective because I think it's short. I basically introduce myself, and I let them know that I run the fastest growing Amazon seller newsletter in the United States right now. I mention my subscribers. I mention previous sponsors. So I obviously name drop some preferred sponsors. The space is really small. So when you see certain names, it's like, oh, shoot, like they're advertising on Amazon Insiders. We need to get on this. So that causes some urgency. So that's pretty effective. And I basically just invite them to respond. After looking at my media kit, I include a link in that email, and I say, if there's any interest, please fill out the form, and then the conversation goes from there.
Okay. And so in that, so the form, does that take them to a call, or is that just like for you to contact them and get back to
Yeah,
them?
all that is that captures their general information. Like, I want to know their website name. I want to know their budget. I want to know which of my packages they're interested in. And then I respond to them with pricing. And then, then you just negotiate over email. Sometimes I'd say at least 25% of the time, they're like, we're not comfortable with email only. We want to talk to you, John, over the phone. And of course the answer is yes. And then we talk through things, and then I close them on the phone.
Interesting. So you think about 75% of people you're just communicating closing over email?
Yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
most are email. Yeah, I landed a massive sponsorship a week ago, and it was all over email. You know,
That makes
I
sense.
think I think a lot of people, they I mean, the data is right in front of you, right? So you have
It's
the
just
media
math.
kit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know who I am on Twitter. Like, there's no, like, secret door. Like, that's what it is. And when they know that other competitors are advertising on Amazon Insiders, it's pretty. I think they're comfortable with it. Some aren't, but most are.
Yeah. I used to be in that position buying a lot of newsletter ads. We're all nerds. We just want to talk over email. We don't need to jump on a
Yeah,
call. We can cover everything there. So that's cool to see that you're able to do that. Because some people are on calls all the time. Some people can do it this way. And I think more and more people can do it that way. So
yeah,
one other question
definitely.
I had, would you kind of answer it, is so you don't reveal the pricing until they fill out the form and request more information. So
Right.
in your media kit and stuff in that email, I'm assuming you're no pricing, not until they actually express interest, right? That's when they get pricing.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't do that to, like, price gouge anyone. I do that to, one. It's kind of confidential, because as my prices increase, I don't want that stuff public per se. Some people are like, you should post that for your newsletter. It makes it more transparent. I tell them my pricing anyways when you fill out the form. Then we go over pricing, and then we go over any bulk discounts for, if it's like a 3-month campaign. Of course, you're getting a discount for that. It's such a long commitment, but it's been working pretty well. I actually started. It's an AI newsletter. I forget the name. It might be the rundown, but the pricing is not shown. And I've talked to more and more newsletter operators who keep the pricing definitely behind the scenes, and
Yeah.
then they release that. It's a wide spectrum. I'm just going with how I can close sponsors the fastest, and it's been, don't show pricing, start the relationship, talk through what packages make sense. I'm then very transparent with the pricing, and then we go over any discounts,
Yeah.
and then that's it.
Yeah, I think the strategy is not to hide it, but you don't want to give them sticker shock. Like you never want to lead with your pricing like, hey, I charge this, do that. It's like you always want to lead with value, help them understand how you can help them,
Exactly.
and then show the pricing. The price tag makes a lot more sense when they see it in that
Yeah.
context.
Yeah,
So
and to give the listeners some background on this, there's another good reason why I do that. The Amazon space is, newsletters are new. Okay. So the Amazon space is all about relationships, conferences and social media ads. Newsletters, that's really not a thing. I mean, we're talking, this is like a multi-billion-dollar industry now. What I'm doing is like at the forefront. And so when you're doing that, there's a lot of hesitation if they saw the price. They'd be like, what is that? Like that doesn't make sense. But when you get someone on email and you talk through like what they can expect, or it could be a phone call, then it makes a little more sense to them. And they're like, okay, our budget is opened up now for that. So that's really important because this is not a common thing for service providers to sign up for ads in a newsletter.
Got it. Tell me about packaging. How do you think about your packages? Do you sell one-off ads? Do you only sell packages? Do you sell like packages that are ads or multi-month contracts? How
Yeah.
do you do it?
Yeah. So so some of my relationships are exclusive. Some of them are just single ads. I always kind of push them to do packages, at least like something that's modest, because a single ad is a really bad return on investment. So you need at least some exposure consistently over a month. So I try to package it at least into 4 ad slots. That could be spread out over 2 months. It kind of depends on how they want to go about it. It's definitely broad in terms of what every sponsor wants. But I kind of encourage that because a single ad, everyone's busy. You might maybe remember that ad in the newsletter. You need something to be consistent. I'm not trying to pitch them 6 months of ads, but I do tell them, hey, I think if I were in your shoes, I'd want some consistent ads, maybe a combination of my more expensive option and then my lower tier option. So I give that as a recommendation.
Okay, so it's encouraged like the 1 month package with some primary and some of those
Exactly.
other recommendations, and then if that works for them, do you try and sell them like the longer packages, 3 months, 6 months, stuff like that?
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
cool.
Yep. Yep.
I think that's a great way to do it. You don't have to reveal your ad pricing and all here, but how do you internally price your ads? Do you think about CPMs on opens? Do you think about clicks you're generating? How do you think about pricing?
So that was a tough one for me because it's a balance between booking sponsors and then also you don't want to be in a position of being too expensive and then you don't have any revenue coming in. So I found, I would say, a really strong, balance between those two things. I did look at other newsletters and checked out their pricing. I'm probably way more expensive for the number of subscribers I have because it's such a micro niche and it's very targeted and I don't have a lot of competition. So that kind of has helped boost my prices. But I'd say they're very fair and they're in line with lots of other newsletters.
What's the math behind it though? Do you look at like, hey, I want to charge a X amount, do I want to charge a $200 CPM, $100 CPM, or do I want to charge a X dollar per click? You don't have to share the CPM, but like, do you
Yeah,
break it down
actually,
that way?
I don't track any of that. It's purely a per placement fee, and none of that math is applied.
And
So,
how did you come up with the fee originally, as far as what you thought was fair? You know what I mean? Like, what was
um,
the math behind that?
again, I was comparing to what other newsletters were doing, and I definitely scaled my pricing up as I grew. So that's the best way to describe it. I didn't have like built-in math per se. I was basically going off of averages in my industry. And obviously I had to pull data from outside the Amazon industry because Amazon newsletters were pretty much non-existent. So I had to kind of figure out what other people were doing. And a lot of that was just testing the waters. Okay, this month I was at this price. How many sponsors did I land? Then the next month, okay, let's lower the price. And then I had an uptick. So I kind of had to basically do some A/B testing.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's the plan for getting to 100K? I think you said it was next Christmas that you want to.
Yeah, yeah. The goal is next
Well,
Christmas. It's going to be hard to achieve that. It's okay. Like I'm not going to be heartbroken if I don't hit that. But the goal over the next year is going to be upping production of content on Twitter. And so because of the acquisition, I got access to, I mean, we're talking hundreds of hours of text-based content. So I'm going to be able to repackage that in my own voice. It's all related to what Amazon sellers go through. There's a possible Kindle book that I'll be able to put out, a possible acquisition, again, probably middle of next year. So I think the acquisition news is probably going to get out. Like who owns who owns that website in the Amazon space? It's a very well known website, so I wouldn't be surprised if I buy another website next year. But we'll see what happens with that.
Okay, so more content production from Twitter. More, I'm curious to see if there's more acquisitions out there for you. That would be a really cool channel to explore more and like get more data on.
Yeah,
So,
it is. It is. Yeah, there are definitely websites out there that, most of them are related to services. So think like just Amazon agencies, Amazon consulting. It'll make sense to purchase them in their list if that comes up. A lot of the other stuff too, Spark Loop is going to be part of that story as well. And then I'll probably reboot Twitter ads as well. I paused those recently because I had to pull back to pay. I had to make some strategic changes, but I'll probably turn those back on as well.
right on. And so, one final question. So, you've built a really high value newsletter in a small, like valuable niche. I'm a big fan of these micro niche B2B newsletters. What would your
Yeah.
advice be for someone who wants to start a niche B2B newsletter and wants to get their first, let's say, 1,000 to 10,000 subscribers? What's like the one piece of advice you have for that person?
Man, don't use AI content and really find your voice with your writing style. So I can't tell you how many times I have had people write back to me and say, "Oh my gosh, John, I love your newsletter because this sounds like you." People know me as very black and white. They know me as, I'm not going to swear in my newsletter, but I use very strong language because I'm trying to get people to take action. And so people find a lot of humor in that and they love that style. So find your voice, find your brand identity and roll with that. So that's probably the biggest piece of advice I'd give. Another one is honestly just don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask other newsletters to promote you. I do a lot of cross swaps with other newsletters. It has always shocked me how many people said yes. So don't feel like, oh, everyone's going to say no, so I'm not going to bother trying. It's okay. Like get rejected, whatever. Like who cares? So if you land 4 out of 10, that's 4 newsletter swaps. That's great. So definitely don't be scared of the grind.
I think both of those pieces of advice come down to not being afraid. So I think a lot of people are afraid to share their voice and like have a strong tone and have opinions. But a voice is really
Yeah.
powerful, right? And so look at all the top
Yeah.
newsletters out there, The Hustle, Milk Road, Morning Brew. They're all known for a strong tone and voice, and people really love that in their inbox. And then also to get anybody to join your newsletter, you got to ask, whether that's on social media in your post, through cross promotions,
Absolutely.
you got to ask out there. So this has been
Absolutely.
awesome. Thanks for
Yeah.
coming on, John. Let me know where can people find you? What's your Twitter account, LinkedIn? Where do people sign up for your newsletter?
Yeah, so on LinkedIn, I'm actually under John Elder, so it's JONELDER. It'll pop up, probably slash. It would be related to Black Label Advisor. My main website is blacklabeladvisor.com, and then on Twitter, it is Black Label ADVSR. And I'm pretty active on there. I have 23,000 followers, so I talk to literally all sorts of different people. So feel free to reach out there anytime.
Yeah, sounds good. And we'll have that link below. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, Matt.